have to say that I go to press events and things like this all over the world, and I never encounter such incredible joy and fun as here, even with the paparazzi or with the audiences. It's so pure. It's like a geyser of film adoration and welcome to its artists. And I can't tell you how much I appreciate it. Thank you.
A little bit back. Your first love was not film, it was theater. And what brought you to theater? And tell us a little bit about it.
Oh, I think probably like many people here, I loved being the clown, and I know I played the Cheshire Cat in Alice in Wonderland, and realize now I played it like a very chic homosexual man. At the time, I didn't know what I was doing, but I was in second grade. No, but I think you just know if you love going to that place and yourself and in the story. And it was very difficult even to get teachers to cast me because I was so tall. They'd go, maybe she could be a tree. Or maybe she could just walk through with a scarf over her head and be the spirit. You know, it was very hard for me to get an actual role.
This is something you've mentioned also in the past. Do you think that your height has determined some shifts in your career?
I'm 5'11", almost 5'11", and I was this tall when I was 11. So that's, I was like a big spider knocking into everything. I was the person they put on the basketball team and then went, oh my God, what have we done? So I actually think it's protected me because it made me feel like I was right for character parts. And it also, casting me was not a conventional decision. Often when I was in Hollywood, as soon as I walked in the room, all the producers would sit down. Al Pacino would sit down. Nobody wanted to look short. And that was sort of how I took the temperature of the room.
What was your relationship with film at that time? Your relationship with film at that time?
In my early 20s,
Yeah.
You know, I really wanted to be a success in the theater and have a life in the theater in like the wonderful Guthrie Theater in Minneapolis. I wanted to be part of a company and literally play the queen one night and play the maid, and then the next night do comedy and drama, just like this. The repertory theater in England and in America, maybe here as well, had been going on for decades, and that's the world I wanted to be part of. So film was something I loved and enjoyed, but I frankly never imagined myself part of that world.
How did you get the Alien script? It must have been an interesting thing to read.
Yes, I think Ridley got a short list from a casting person in California. It's a very good script, of course. It's a Walter Hill and David Garner script. It's kind of 10 little Indians. But if you don't know about Giger's artwork and you don't know what kind of creature the alien is, I mean, I just imagine some sort of big blob of yellow jello or something, and there's no indication that had acid for blood. So before he showed me the pictures, I was sort of like, actually I went to the wrong place and called my agent and I said, I'm in the wrong place. I think I shouldn't bother. And she said, no, you really should go to the right place and meet this man. So I'm very lucky it all worked out that day.
And he gave you a tour of the ship, the set?
No, nothing existed, I don't think. He pulled up these big, beautiful pictures by Carlo Ramboldi of the creature itself, and pictures of Giger's planet and the spaceships and the space jockey, and it was the most exciting thing to imagine that this could be a film. And frankly, it could only be a film because it was like a dream, a very dark, sexual dream. And I thought, well, what fun! Let's go scare people's pants off.
I was looking at an old interview you gave on television at the time, right after the film came out, and you said something that really hit me. And you said, I think the question was, were you scared of the monster? And you said something along the line, I didn't know how to imagine a monster or an alien. I just was playing fear of the unknown. And I think that's a really profound thing to say, especially for a young actor. And it's a really a sure acting choice.
I had a lot of fear of the unknown. What's interesting is I think fear is an interesting thing because I think you cannot play fear. You play, this is going to work out. You play, what do I hear? What do I really see? Not, what do I really see? What do I really hear? But what am I hearing? What am I seeing? What is happening under the earth? All these sensory things to get your bearings that people do when they're afraid, because they're looking for hints of what is going to happen. And so you're all electrically wired. So it's a state of being, but it's not like, it's more like, I don't know what's going to happen, so I don't know what I'm going to do.
And it must have been, considering how different these special effects are today. I mean, I can imagine it was mostly the practical effect, so it was physical. I mean, there was no CGI at the time. So can you bring us a little bit through the shoot and what it was like?
Well, I was so fortunate because Ridley Scott was a smart fellow on many levels. He could have given me a potted palm and said, well, this is it. This is what you have to react to. Instead, he really gave me something to react to, which was this. He found this art student in a pub nearby and put this man who's 7'6" in the suit. And I never saw him before I was on the Nostromo and his arm popped out. And believe me, it was scary. And so this man himself would have looked so exotic anyway, and yet in this suit, it was, I didn't have to act. I was just like, you can't even take it in. So I'm grateful to Ridley, and I always had, after the first one, I always had Tom Woodruff in the suit. Tom Woodruff and Alec Gillis were the special effects guys, and poor Tom had to be in that suit underwater and God knows what else, and they forgot to put the oxygen in it, and oh my God. He was so brave, but he was, I had a being, a presence, an intense presence to think about with the history, especially of our relationship.
Did you expect that the film was going to become a phenomenon back then?
No, this was a $14 million movie, and
14?
Yeah, and I remember actually really didn't really know how to end it. He often had to, with his cinematographer, come up with a way of shooting something in a completely new way. He and Derek Vallan, they'd be in some crazy place and they turn the camera upside down. And for the ending, Ridley's making all these drawings, and he thought, well, I'll just keep on shooting until I can figure this out. And they said, you have to finish in 3 days. The alien has to be finished in 3 days. So they did all these quick experiments, and they realized that if they have water against the alien, it will look like it's burning up. And it all happened very fast. It was a total improvisation, and it's just, the crews that you get to work with. It's fabulous to be part of a group of people who are all single-mindedly trying to tell the best story possible, giving all their particular skill. And so, we just made it. We just made it.
You said yesterday that the film that made you actually wanna make films forever. was a Year of Living Dangerously, which is a completely different piece. It's set in a faraway country in a specific political reality. Can you talk a little bit?
You know, I've actually been doing a Shakespeare play in New York with a famous English actor whose name I won't mention, who was sort of directing me by kind of grabbing me and, you know, pushing me through the scenes, and it was, I think, unpleasant for all the actors. In any case, I finally said, listen, I don't think you're going to be happy till you put the dress on and play it yourself. And so I was suddenly on my way to the Philippines instead, working for Peter Weir. So I would say I was, when you're fired, you get a little insecure. So when I started working for Peter, I think I was a little tentative. And Peter, like all Australians, will really tell you the truth, whether you want to hear it or not. And so, honestly, he said, you're so inexperienced, I want you to just start by just talking to the other actors and just being yourself and just getting used to being in front of the camera. No one had ever taken the time with me to do that. And it was such a chaotic, mad, we were thrown out of the Philippines, we had to, it's the whole saga. Anyway, by the end of the experience, I had fallen in love with him. And he's such a passionate, instinctive director. You know, he used to play this Vangelis music to us when we did our scenes. And it's such an amazing thing to act to a score. I didn't know, I think he uses it in the film, otherwise I don't know how it would get it out. But it was just a thrilling experience, and one that I really, frankly, haven't repeated.
And I was thinking about what you were saying before about wanting to be an actor in a repertory theater. And it feels like your career, in a way, you've touched on so many different roles. I mean, it's just like a fearlessness, you know, and just an enthusiasm for just trying new things and being here and being there. And can you explain what is this, you know, how your curiosity and why you are so fascinated by doing the opposite we have done before and the opposite we have done, you know, before?
Oh, I don't know that I can explain it. It was just like, you know, I just couldn't help wanting to go in completely the opposite direction each time. That's what was fun for me. Sort of just like, you know, going from Year of Living Dangerous to Ghostbusters to this, to that. It was the extremes that really were so exciting because film stories come in so many different shapes and qualities, and it was really like seeing the universe through these stories and wanting more, wanting to see more.
Is it stories or a character for you?
Definitely stories. I can come up with a character, but the story, I feel, I decide from here. I think the artist's stomach should have a decisive role in your choices of material and of choices in the scene, because here it can get confused, but there it's just like a compass. And I just followed that as my compass. The story, either I felt here or I didn't, and it really didn't matter what genre it was, and it really didn't matter what the part was. I figured if you give me a certain number of scenes, I can make whatever you need work. I mean, I was an English major. I was quite conceited as an English major, and I thought, I can do this. Because I had a really good idea of structure and, you know, all the unities and all that stuff we learned. But it was the story. Was this a story that was about more than the people in it? And the director did their vision, of course it was always his vision then, but did the vision, was the story structure and the vision of the director strong enough to survive the filmmaking process? Because that's a pretty tough process, and a lot of things will come at you. So those two things had to be like, I had to bet. It's like I was gambling. I bet on those two things. And And I still kind of feel like I'm doing that. I've been on that story.
Do you enjoy the filmmaking process, life on set, and that part?
I really love the filming process now, even though it's all upside down, backward. I used to be like, oh, this is so barbaric, this working out of order. You know, I so wanted to tell a story from beginning to end. And of course, you can do that, but I had to not do that for Alien right away. And that's when I realized that, and I think it was just reported in Deadline, but I was talking to Ian Holm and I said, do you think that Ripley feels that what she's doing is right all the time? And he said, yes, I feel that she knows that she's right. And I said, I don't think she knows at all. I think it's a complete improvisation. She doesn't know from one scene to the next whether she's doing the right thing. And in fact, that decision, which I probably made the first week, is why I think Ripley works. You know, if I played her in Control, it wouldn't have worked.
Speaking of storytelling and the passion for story, when you have a character like Ripley that is with you for several years and several films, do you get involved at all in the writing, and or did you in that particular instance?
Well, you know, if you have Walter Hill and David Goyer, you don't need to get involved in writing of the character. But if you don't have those guys who really understood the character, Walter understands Ripley more than anybody else. And when other people try to write a tough woman character, she always sounds like an angry gym teacher. It's like, hey people, let's get going here. You know, it's just sort of like very unspecific, and you have to.
C'è qualcosa, c'è una voce. Potete dire, signor ragazzi?
You have to write a woman like you would any man. You just have to write the person. It's when they try to write a woman, especially a guy writing a woman, they get into a lot of trouble. So write it for your best guy friend, and that will be probably a much better part for you.
Did you expect Ripley to become so iconic, not only, but to be such an influence for, I would say, actresses and broadening the possibility of the roles, but also I think young girls?
I'm absolutely astonished. I know that Winona had a picture of Ripley in her bedroom growing up, for instance. I don't really take credit for all of that. I go, good for you, Ripley. You know, I mean, I couldn't be more pleased that I would contribute to girls, young girls, you know, believing in themselves and believing that they can do anything. Because that's a point in your life where I think it's very easy not to feel very self-conscious and doubt all of your choices and all of your traits and everything. And so if I can be there on their wall or in their, you know, DVD player to say, you can do it, girl, I'm happy to do that.
You hinted something yesterday that I make a mental note to ask you follow-up with. You said, given a choice, you prefer comedies. Why?
Well, I don't want to sound conceited, but I'm good at comedy. You know, I'm sorry, I think you're either born with it or not. I think that's a very hard thing to teach. And I'm very grateful. I think because my father was working with Sid Caesar and Machine Go-Go, somehow I got struck by the little comedy stick, and I think that's where I find a lot of the joy. And I really do think that films, you know, when you're exploring them, you're always looking for a script that has equal measures light and dark and equal measures comedy and drama. Because there's always something funny about tragedy too. I think that's what Tim Burton did so beautifully yesterday. Winona and all those wonderful actors in Beetlejuice. Such a light and dark movie. My God, it takes you places. And so I just think it's always good if you're in a comedy, take it very seriously. And if you're in a drama, you have to find those moments because we're playing human beings, and that's sort of, to me, it's a reflection of life. You're never going to get one that's a life that's all one thing.
And someone who the light is watching you act with another great actor who's also a great comedian is Vallan.
Yes.
You made several films together.
I did. He's such a marvelous actor and can do anything, honestly.
And sorry, I lost my train of thought, but it's coming back. Yes, there is a movie that I think it feels like, in a sense, a transformative experience in your career, and it is Realizing the Nest. After you have your
to go to Africa for the first time and to work with these amazing wild creatures is such a transformative experience for all of us who were on the film. It just fills you with just so many different emotions because there's such, they're 98% the same genetic material as we have, but they live a much more noble life. And they don't even really fight with each other, they just sort of shake trees at each other. And they mostly just live so peacefully and take care of their families. It's all about taking care of the families. So it was just a great introduction to that wild world, which, I grew up in New York, so I've been to the central part of seeing the seals. So I just felt so blessed the whole time. And I found playing Diane hard because I wasn't really satisfied with the script. I felt we were trying to do all 18 years in Rwanda instead of focusing perhaps on one smaller part of the story. But, I didn't win that argument.
and again, no CGI, so you were really with the gorillas, which really be allowed today, right?
I don't know. I was with her study group 5, which had been habituated. So they were used to people coming in, and I was trained by the Karasoki scientists to go in and stay low and all of that. And believe me, they're just like us. There could be 25 gorillas. Most of them wouldn't care at all that I was there. There might be a few who wish I weren't there. And then about 3 of them couldn't wait to come over and say hello to me, see what was in my bag, pull my hair, etc. So it was fascinating. And you know what? It was so easy for me. As an actor, I'm constantly going into new groups of people and starting with them in a relationship, working, etc. Same thing with these guys. I just went in with a whole new group of furry people.
And that also affected your relationship with the environment or your interest in environmental causes?
Yes, I feel very blessed that I played Diane. I was able to look at one letter from Diane. Farley Hope was writing a book about Diane Fossey, and I went all the way up to Nova Scotia in hopes of reading the manuscript. And I was doing a Warner Brothers movie, and this was a Warner Brothers book, and when I got there, he opened the door and said, "They're not going to let me show it to you." I said, "What?" He said, "They're not going to let me show it to you. I'll get you some tea." And I went into the living room, and I sat down, I was like, and in front of me, on the coffee table, there was a piece of paper, and it was a letter from Diane to someone named Cindy. And I started reading it. It's all about Cindy's parents and what good friends they were of Diane's, and then how they had such a special friendship because they had agreed long ago never to cry in front of each other. And the letter went on, and by the end of it, I realized she was writing to her dog. which had just died. And it was then I realized that for Diane, animals were absolutely equal to humans, and that they had absolutely every right to every inch of the earth as humans, and what we were doing to them, to all these species of so many different kinds of creatures, was wrong. And once I absorbed that from Diane, you really can't go back when that happens to you.
In the film you were performing someone in real life, there was a real person. But is that the level of research that that you approach every role, where you're really trying to get close to as close to the source as possible?
Yes, I think for me, I like to really try to do a deep dive into the world, almost like a little Pac-Man going, just eating everything in sight. And then I don't know what I'm going to use, but the more I can be immersed in a situation or a place or a world, I don't know what I'm going to use it for, but I know it's going to somehow penetrate into me and that something will come out. So I do like to do that. It's a preference because, frankly, I need all the help I can get. I need all the inspiration I can get. I can't make anything work. I'm not that charming. So I really need to sort of immerse myself in order to come out with these instincts for the story or for the person that are natural.
Speaking of charming, one of your characters people love to hate is in working, Nico's working there. Was that all on the page? Is it something that you and Nico's, I know you like to collaborate with these actors?
Well, we did have a mutual friend that we both really liked, who we based Catherine on. And it always made us giggle when we were doing Catherine scenes, because it needed a very light touch. Because, Catherine is just herself, as she says. So it was a kind of secret thing between me and Mike. It just gave it a lot of specificity. And, because she can't be a monster. She has to like herself.
When you work with some great masters, you work with James Cameron, you work with Ridley Scott, you collaborate with Walter Hill, a lot of really big name filmmakers. But one thing that's just wonderful about your filmography is that you always seem open to first, second time filmmakers, filmmakers that have no big, gigantic Hollywood reputation. Is that something that you do by choice? Is just the material, and how scary is to go on a set with someone totally untested?
I never really worry about it, because if a filmmaker comes to me and it's his first film and he's written this film, and I keep saying he because in my experience, one thing I'm really missing is women directors and women writers. That was true for a long, long time. But yeah, if I am, I feel like all the choices I made had to go with this person, but totally believed they could do it. Never went on the set going, oh my God, this person is a schmo. Because honestly, if they're a schmo, you can tell earlier than that. If you make a suggestion, you never hear anything about it. You're kind of going, okay. Either people, you can tell who's going to really work with you and who really wants to communicate and have fun and discover more. And, not every director wants to do that, nor do I require it. But usually the first-time director, they're so excited to be doing what they're doing, and they're so passionate about it. How can you not work with that person?
Speaking of one of the recent films, it's about a director who's not gigantic experience. It's called Jane. And women, speaking of women directors, and does it give you a purpose, a pleasure to also do films where there is an issue or there is a context that is something that you feel passionate about and you want to use your profile to hide it?
Yes, I think with Death in the Maiden, I've been working with Human Rights First for years. I've met some of the women from Chile who had had these experiences, and when this came up for me, I was so grateful that I was in a position as an actor to be able to tell their story. Same thing with Call Janie, because at that point we were naive enough to think that the Supreme Court would respect a law that had been on the books nationally for 50 years. Boy, were we wrong. Anyway, we just wanted to remind people of those bad old days, and I also loved the character of Virginia. I just loved Virginia. I loved every character in it, and I just thought it was an amazing, Liz Banks, everyone in it was just, it was something we really hoped would make a difference, and by the time it came out, the worst had already happened, but hopefully it's, your films keep revolving around, and I can only hope that it's given some groups of women encouragement.
For those of you that haven't seen the film, Call Jane is about the collective of women that prior that abortion was legalized before being made not legal. When prior that abortion was legalized in the U.S., were providing abortion in Chicago, and it's a legendary group of very heroic women that were helping each other and helping women that were in need. So
before Roe versus Wade was passed, they were all arrested just at the end, but then luckily it passed, so they were all set free. But it's a true story.
Well, the director of the second Aliens was James Cameron. That's when you met him, and you've been working with him since, on and off, obviously. Can you talk a little bit about the experience, first on Aliens, where he just made his character become enormous?
Well, I really received this script from someone I didn't know, Jim Cameron. This whole amazing saga of Ripley and this band of Marines, and I was just so blown away by his skill, by his talent, by his passion, by his humor, by his detail of these worlds. And I didn't know anything about him. I didn't know he could actually build all this stuff as well. But what was remarkable to me about Jim was he was so respectful. He said, I know you can't say yes to this till we've met. I was like, yes, I'll do it. I'm on every page. Of course I'll do it. But he waited, we met with Galen Hurd, and he just couldn't have been, he was just so open to any thoughts that I might have, and I just felt his instincts were amazing. And one thing, of course, I wasn't thrilled about were all the guns. And I read very quickly because I'm trying to experience the story, and I had left out reading a lot of the stage directions, which had a lot of guns in them. I skipped it. So one day he brought in all these guns, and I said, well, what are those for? And he said, well, what do you mean? I said, well, I'm for gun control, and I'm really not going to be picking up a gun and doing anything with it. He said, you haven't noticed it? I said, well, I have. But I hadn't read all those paragraphs about guns. So he did take me out into the back fields and had me, I don't know what the word is, shoot off a couple hundred rounds of this machine gun, which unfortunately is very addictive. And he said, I want you to see what happens to her. And, I think, of course, she needs to defend herself, but also, I understood why he wanted to use guns. It wasn't my first choice. I don't think she uses guns very much in all the others.
Avatar has been a completely different experience. It's a great new world, and as you said in this video last night, it's a world in Pandora that you love. You have those values. So tell us a little bit about Avatar, because you already made 2 films as 2 different characters, and then you're going to be making 2 more.
So we made 1, I Was Grace, and in 2 and 3 and 4 and 5, I play Kiri. And we had to commit to all four new films without knowing what was in them, and make our deals without knowing what was in them. He wasn't sure he'd write about any of us, really, probably, except for Natiri and Jake. So you had to make your deal in a sort of black box. You didn't know what was in it. So, and then it's taken, about 5 years to write them. Luckily, they're wonderful. And I think the saga, whatever you want to call it, is only going to get more fascinating. I still can't believe, I would be reading the pages of these blue people with ears and tails flying by these floating mountains, and I'm like, how on earth can you do any of this? This is impossible. And it's just his producer, John Landau, who unfortunately just died. But I think John was Jim's business partner for years, Titanic and everything else. And Jim would come up and say, listen, I want to tell this story about these blue people with the ears and the tails. And believe me, the technology doesn't exist. We'll have to take years to develop the technology, and I'll have to invent a new kind of camera. And John would just say, well, when do we start? There was a partnership that was just made to be, and we're all going to try to carry on with John's spirit of let's go, And now, of course, it's the easy part, I guess, because they have invented everything.
So you didn't know originally that your character was going to die and then come back as a...
Well, my character had died before he wrote these four. But, we just had lunch in LA, and we were just kind of dreaming, doodling around. I said, it'd be interesting if there was some connection with Grace, maybe someone who felt more at home in forest, maybe she could kind of disappear into a bush or a fern. Maybe she doesn't know what she is. Anyway, we just had this little chat, and then he goes away, and he writes this, I think, really wonderful character. And I think he's so interested in telling a story about a family staying together and a family being uprooted, as so many families are around the world, against the backdrop of an environmental emergency, especially with the forces of greed and the forces of just let us live our lives peacefully here, safely. I think it's a very relevant story, and he's got unbridled enthusiasm to tell it. So that's good.
So you do think that Pandora is developing as like a metaphor, like a utopia of a kind?
I think that you will get more of an understanding of Earth in relationship to Pandora. You will hear more of Earth's story as we go along. I think it comes out of his incredible sadness about what's happening on our planet and how we are taking so long to move this huge ship around that's used to using fossil fuels, and then we're running out of time. So,
before you open the question for the audience, you have a new film that you shared with us. That's funny. And can you just tell us what it is and when we can expect to see it?
Yes, I'd love to. Dust Bunny is by Brian Fuller. He is a wonderful writer-director, and it's a story of a little girl named Aurora who thinks that the dust bunny under her bed is coming out at night and eating people. And so she sees this man who she follows through the rooftops of this town, and it's played by Mads Mikkelsen, so it's kind of a Julia character. And anyway, she hires him to kill the dust bunny under her bed, and it becomes this very scary but also quite amazing, beautiful enchanted story about this little girl and this man kind of working together to deal with a dust bunny under the bed, or what it really is. And I play a very perhaps not so nice person in it. I don't know why they cast me as that. And again, Madame Leterrier did the costumes for me. It's just a wonderful movie. It's small. I really wish it would open here, because I don't know what America will think of it. To me, it's an instant classic. It's a little dark, but that's good. So I have great hopes for it. And I wish him all success. He's extremely gifted.
You raise your hand, and we have time for a few questions from the audience if you want to ask something. Right there. Wait for the mic, you keep up on the microphone.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much for being here. My question is, as a young student who is a little bit unsure about what the future and what's coming next, do you have any advice or suggest about how to find our own way into the multimedia industry?
I think you're very close to it just because of the way you asked that question. How to find your own way. And honestly, what I realized, and I'm an old person, so I can tell you this can't figure it out. It really is in here. You have to trust your gut. You know, a lot of times I feel that by working with your peers, people who already know, it's not like the doors will open with some bigwig, you know, who has power. The power will come with you working with your peers and doing things that you love, that you know you can do, and that will grow, I think, sort of like a great tree, and be noticed by these people who may open doors. But you don't need to, you know, make it to some other level to start your creative life. Whoever you're with now who you love to work with, just support each other and make films and tell stories and really follow your instincts, because you really can't go wrong. Believe in yourself. Don't let anyone tell you you can't do it, unless that's going to help you get angry and do it. Well, it sounds to me like you're doing everything right, you know. As I said, working with your peers, the industry, it really, if it's doing its job, it will find you. So you keep doing what you're doing and you do your best. It was the hardest time of my life. I could not get an agent. If I walked into your office and I'm 6 feet tall, you're not going to sign me up, okay? So it took me 4 years to get an agent, and I got my first job with Ingrid Bergman through Backstage, which is a publication. I had 4 auditions, and I got it. Try not to have too specific a picture of what success looks like to you, but make a success of whatever comes to you. I really feel that that's the key. Be grateful for any little opportunity that comes and enjoy it. And be, you know, to me, my goal was to be someone that people wanted to work with again. That was my only goal. I thought that way I'll stay employed. So my goal was kind of humble, my goal is not to become whatever this is. That I would not have dreamed of having that goal. So first of all, you're doing great, and you're just going to have to be patient. It's a bitch, but it's up to the industry to find you, and you just keep doing what you're doing. And I think that I really feel your passion and your commitment and how much you care. It's all going to be fine. It's going to be good.
I'm just curious, maybe you have some special acting technique that you prefer, like Strasberg or Stanislavski or Meisner, and you use this technique for prepare your role. Thank you. I don't know if it's clear.
Is the question, is there a specific method that I use?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
I think my method is a grab bag of whatever I can use. To me, you pack a suitcase. When I'm preparing a role, everything, I'm doing Prospero and Tempest, everything I can think of goes into that suitcase. I don't think, oh, am I going to use this? I feel like I didn't, I tried to audition for the Actors Studio, and by the time we put all our props out, they said, your time is up, you'll have to leave. So I never did that. But I found teachers who could teach me about different things, and you develop your own suitcase filled with all these different ideas. And I think what I could have learned from is that you don't really trust them because they didn't come from a school, because they didn't come from a master like Stanislavski. You don't really trust your suitcase. You think other people's suitcases are filled with better things, and that's nonsense. Whatever's in your suitcase is the best. And I just want to add one thing for you, young lady.
Thank you.
The best thing I ever heard about success is something George Wolfe, the director, said at a NYU graduation. And I was there with Louis Leterrier, who was graduating before he'd had his wonderful career. And George got up to the podium and he looked around and he said, I'm going to talk to you about the greatest creative tool you have in your life. And he leaned forward, he grabbed the podium and he said, failure, 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 failure. And everyone in the room went like that because he said the F word. It was the word everyone is so terrified of, parents and children. And then he talked about how for years he developed this musical. He didn't, I think he wrote it, he directed it, he was producing it. It was called Paradise. He had high hopes for it. It opened and it got terrible reviews, mean reviews. It said, if this is Paradise, I want to go to the other place. And the director should put a sign on the theater door that says, keep out. So poor George wandered around for a couple of days and he realized that he had to make a decision. Was he going to keep doing what he believed was interesting, what he cared about, which was like Paradise, or should he change what he did to suit what the taste was of these critics? And he realized that life is like a big casino, and everyone around him is at their machine, their slot machine, and throwing money and pulling the levers and pulling the levers, and he's throwing money and pulling the levers all around him. The machines are going off, and people are getting jackpots, and you're going, wow, that machine is really good. I don't like my machine. I'm going to go over there and use that machine. He said, stick with your machine. It may take longer, it may not happen the way you expect it to, but stick with your machine because that will be the most productive, satisfying thing for you. And so that I give you, and I give to you It was the most helpful thing I've ever heard, and I think I heard it in my 50s.
You're just about to start a round of production of The Tempest. You know. How does theater, you kept doing theater through and through the years, how does theater keep nourishing you? And how does theater keep nourishing you and your film work, if in any ways?
Well, I'm hoping it will nourish me, not murder me. I am so excited about working with Jamie Lloyd, and the idea of a woman playing Prospero. You know, I think being with a live audience, telling a story from beginning to end, in many cases, I think in this production we'll have people in the audience who've never seen Shakespeare, who've never, been to the theater, probably. And it will be an opportunity to get those people in and invite them to join this world and experience this. So I'm really doing it for that. I just feel like I'm going on a boat to some place that I'm not quite sure what it's going to be. I think it's going to be hard. It's probably going to be like what happened to Prospero, was he was put on a boat that didn't have a mast and didn't have a sail, and he was just thrown there with his baby daughter. And somehow they got to this desert island. So I don't know what's going to happen, but I'm terribly excited. And I haven't done anything that's this. I often do things that scare me. I think I must find that exhilarating. I don't know why I do it. But believe me, I always, beginning of a job, I always think, this is going to be the biggest disaster. I don't know how to do this. I can't even remember how to act. And So I don't know what my state of mind is, except that if you come to London, I hope you'll come and see us. It's a 2,000-seat theater, and I'd love to have you there.
We can do one more and we'll go in this direction because. Okay.
Hello, hi. Are there any roles you have not accepted and you might feel sorry about? And in general, what is your life credo? So the slogan, what the guidance, what is guiding you?
For some reason, I find it very hard to exactly hear what you were saying.
Oh, sorry.
So she's asking. She said, are there roles that you rejected and you regret rejecting? And also, what is your life credo? So, what is your life philosophy? Your philosophy of life.
Yes, there are roles that I have not wanted to do that have gone to wonderful actresses who made a great success of them, and fine. You can't do everything, and usually there was a good reason that I didn't want to be part of it. As for my philosophy, I think I just said it with George. I think that you have to remember, as you're feeling, I think what we do, if we're artists or writers or filmmakers in the arts, I think a certain amount of self-doubt, unfortunately, is part of your process, and I find it agonizing myself. I'm like, no, do I have to doubt myself so much? And each time when I ever get over that, I honestly think it must be some part of the creative process that, it's actually a good thing. It's your friend, it makes you work hard. But my philosophy is when I look back, I was so worried all the time about being able to make a living, because my mother was not very supportive and kept telling me to get a waitress job. And I thought, if I'm doing what I'm doing, all these auditions and waitressing too, I'm going to kill myself. And I was also a terrible waitress. But I think if I could only have told my young self, just relax, just try to be where you are, just try to enjoy life, and trust that the universe, if you're doing your work and you're working as hard as you can, the universe I feel is going to find you and offer things to you that you couldn't possibly have thought of if you'd sat down and tried to make some 5-year plan. It's just, art is not like that. So I guess I would just want to tell myself to have fun and enjoy the process and not feel that by taking so long I didn't deserve it or something, you know. Trust that this experience you're having is normal, because it is.
With this major life, we will see Sigourney. This is very important.